What's shaking? My name's Cam, welcome back to another video. I make lots of videos on fantasy books, so if that's your kind of thing then I would love it if you stuck around. So if you've clicked on this one, then chances are, like me, you've conquered the behemoth that is the Stormlight Archive so far. I already have a full review for the 4 books that are out as we know it right now for Stormlight Archive, so if you want to check that out, you can. But hopefully I'm not alone in having a huge number of unanswered questions even after finishing those 4 books. And it's with that in mind that I've made a list of my top 5 Stormlight Archive Book 5 questions and enlisted the help of the biggest brain in the Cosmere fanbase to help answer them, or at least speculate on them. So we're going to jump straight into it, but if you have any thoughts on any of the questions that I'm going to list here and the answers that we give, please do leave a comment. This is Lost in Discovery, and he has the best and most well-researched Stormlight Archive videos on YouTube. If you don't know, now you know.
Hey Cam, cheers for having me on the channel. Always happy to nerd out about some Stormlight Archive. Now, it's been a minute since I first read Rhythm of War. I read this book right when it came out, and I've only gone back to it to make videos, so I'll do my best in answering these questions and giving you my thoughts on the next book to come.
Question 1. How will Book 5 pad out the 10 days before the Contest of Champions? At the end of the last book, we have basically set up for a big Contest of Champions, which is going to decide, as far as we know so far, the big conflict that has been set out. But as we know, Brandon Sanderson also likes to make his books 1,000,000 pages long, so with it only being 10 days until that contest, what else can we expect to see from this book?
Now, this is a really interesting one because there's a lot of debate in the community whether the book is going to be solely focused on these 10 days, ending with the Contest of Champions and leaving us wondering what the heck is going to happen in the back half of the series. Or will this 10 days happen in a flash and we have a whole 1,000 pages afterwards where we discover the fallout and see the repercussions of it? Either way, if it does it at the beginning or saves us and keeps us waiting until the end, there is so much to explore before getting there. The cast of the Stormlight Archive has only gotten larger and more intricate, and just the introspection and the close examination of mental health has just got further and further focused on into the series, and I really feel like we're going to get a heavy look into the minds of these characters, especially Kaladin and Szeth as they do their buddy cop movie to Shinova. I really do believe that we're going to get Shallan venturing right out into the Cosmere in this next book, which just leaves an absolute wealth of possibilities. So if I had to sum up my answer quickly, buddy cop movie with Szeth and Kaladin will be a large portion. The Szeth flashbacks will be, of course, integral, and following Shallan throughout Shadesmar and potentially other worlds in the Cosmere, there's lots and lots to explore before we even get to the Battle of Champions. And even if we get to it really quickly, I think the fallout is going to change the face of Roshar forever.
Question 2. What are the Ghostbloods actually up to? This is an organization within the story that I still am very confused by. I have no idea what their true motives are. They're very mysterious. Hopefully Lost in Discovery can give me a bit of insight.
The Ghostbloods are one of those groups that you have just been, well, at least me personally, I've been so intrigued about them ever since we really started to get clues about them in Words of Radiance, when Shallan starts talking with Mraize and learning about this entire new subplot and sort of underground society, more or less, that is taking place in Roshar. As you continue further into the series and into Rhythm of War, you really grasp, like, holy crap, this is a Cosmere-wide organization led by Thydekar, the Lord of Scars, as he is referred to in Rhythm of War. And if you know who this guy is, you know. He's from another very important Cosmere series by Brandon Sanderson, and it is very cool to see a character from another world have such a large impact and large focus in Roshar and the Stormlight Archive. Now, exactly to the finest detail what the Ghostbloods are up to is still up for debate, but what is really clear to see is that they are trying to get the form of investiture of Stormlight off of Roshar. Basically, all the worlds in Cosmere have different powers and different forms of investiture, that of Roshar being Stormlight, and it's very, very hard to get these forms of investiture off-world to other planets. So far, it looks like you need an absolutely perfect gemstone to hold the Stormlight, and then to offload it to another world. Why do they want to do that exactly? Well, you could kind of extrapolate for a few reasons. We know that the leader of the Ghostbloods, Timecards, is actually stuck on his home planet. To some extent, it gets kind of intricately Cosmere, boring kind of semantics at that point, but it would be very useful for the leader Thydekar. They are also very, very interested in the unmade Bar Ado Mishram on Roshar. And Bar Ado Mishram in the history of Roshar actually had the ability to take over an entire people of the Parshmen and take away and grant forms. So trying to take investiture off-world, also trying to find a godlike unmade figure that could control entire populations, your mind tends to go to darker possibilities and places. Look, I think the Ghostbloods are going to be a massive force seen throughout the Cosmere, and I'm not sure if I want to see them succeed in the way of it would be interesting narratively, or if it would be devastating to our characters, which would also be interesting in its own way. To add on to that as well, they have a very, very keen interest in heralds because they have been alive for a considerable amount of time, similar to the leader of the Ghostbloods, and especially are using Rastaris / Kalak to gain information to use as kind of a player, as he's very familiar with Bar Ado Mishram and is also interested in getting off the world of Roshar. There are so many moving parts to the Ghostbloods. I hope I've just sort of given enough little tidbits to get you curious and get you thinking about it and doing your own research as well. It's probably something I need to make a proper video on too.
Question 3, a bit of a fun one. Do you think any main characters will die in Book 5, being that Book 5 is going to be the end of the first kind of story arc of the Stormlight Archive? And if you do think someone's going to die, who and why?
Book 5 marks the end of the first era of the Stormlight Archive, with books 6 to 10 taking about, I think, 20 years, taking place about 20 years after the fact. And with that, I believe we are going to get some big deaths because, you know, we need kind of that dividing point. I feel like Brandon is not going to hold back. He's going to end Book 5 in quite a devastating fashion, I believe. And with that comes deaths. At the same time, though, Sanderson, you know, his track record for bringing back characters in some form or another is pretty high, and we've rarely gotten permadeaths of main characters in the Cosmere. So I have a few theories on this. The one death I'm most, you know, sure of happening, or most convinced could happen in Book 5, is Dalinar. Dalinar is a character who has had an incredible arc, an incredible growth, and has gone through so much in this series so far, and in a way it kind of feels like his arc has wrapped up and he's sort of gone through his entire character journey, and he's still just, you know, just hanging with our cast. And it feels like this is a character that you could give a death in a satisfying manner and the story would still grow and it would leave a hole. Of course, we are also invested in Dalinar, but it would allow us to have that drama and have that big impact that we take into the second half of the series. Another possibility with Dalinar is that he becomes or takes up a shard, and this is my potential theory with Kaladin as well. Kaladin is a character that would be absolutely devastated if he was to die in this book, in any book, and I really would love to see Kaladin, you know, still on the world, not taken up a shard or not become the new honor, which seems to be heavily foreshadowed throughout the series. I would like him to stay good old human radiant Kaladin until book 10 and maybe take on more of a elderly background role then. But at the same time, if you want to end your first half of your series in a very impactful way, killing someone like Kaladin or making him change in some way, get stuck in the cognitive realm, take up a shard, turn into a new version of himself, could be very impactful too. And I believe that's probably more likely the direction that Sanderson will take at the end of book 5 as opposed to permadeaths. But if I had to bet on someone, probably Dalinar.
Question 4. How else may Stormlight Archive crossover with other Cosmere stories. As we know, Brandon Sanderson's different fantasy epics are all set within the same kind of solar system. They're on different planets. And we've already seen a few hints and crossovers to other worlds within this Cosmere, so what else could happen?
In terms of crossovers, this is just going to get absolutely wild. Sanderson really chose to ramp up the crossover territory in Rhythm of War, and I feel like he's kind of prepping us like this is going to be just a whole new level, especially towards book 10 in the series as we wrap things up. He's always maintained the fact that you can read Stormlight though without having read any Cosmere, so it's going to be interesting to see how he implements some key plays from other stories, rocking up in Roshar and rocking the boat there as well. So far, we've got major links to Scadrial, which is the world of Mistborn, and major links to... I'm not remembering the planet right now, but major links to the series of Warbreaker. Nalthus is the planet. We have multiple characters that have shown up from Warbreaker. I don't want to necessarily say them now in case you're unaware, but Nightblood is clearly from another world, and Nightblood has already played a massive part in the series, and it looks like the sequel to Warbreaker will be called Nightblood, so I believe the tie-ins to Warbreaker are going to be built up upon. I at least really hope they do, because the characters that have shown up in Stormlight from Warbreaker are some of my favorites, and I really want to see how the heck they got to Roshar in the first place. But I think the largest crossover is going to be with the world of Scadrial and Mistborn. I think these worlds are absolutely going to collide, and by book 10 I feel like a huge amount of the cast is going to be from Scadrial as well, especially with things ramping up with the Ghostbloods, the technology improving in Roshar, and just us going from an almost fantasy to sci-fi timeline as we progress in this world. I feel like the most natural occurrence is going to be a Scadrial Roshar crossover, and we know that Brandon is planning to take the Cosmere all the way up to the space age, and he's kind of teased us with that, and we have seen Rosharians and Scadrians interacting and using the powers from that world still in a futuristic way, which is just absolutely bonkers to think about.
Question 5, and the one that's been burning with me the most so far. Who fooled who in the Rhythm of War epilogue? Hoid or Taravangi and Odium?
This question has been playing on my mind pretty much ever since I read the chapter. For a really detailed explanation on what I think, I encourage you to go to my channel. I made a proper video on this discussing why I had so much doubt in this chapter and why I believe that Hoid potentially has gotten away with something and potentially has called Taravodium's bluff here. But to sum up my thoughts, just the way this chapter was written, how even we kind of have this fourth wall break with Hoid speaking about doing coin tricks and tricking the audience and having them having a participatory role in it and having a chance to figure things out. It just felt like Sanderson was talking to us and saying, hey look, if you look close enough here, you can figure things out. And when this whole conversation happens again after these memories are wiped from Wit/Hoid, we see how he embellishes how he speaks to Odium the second way, as almost as if he's aware of what he had said previously. We do see that he does lose his perfect pitch though, so there's enough doubts on both ends. Something was surely taken from Hoid. I do believe that he was messed with in some point, but I do think that potentially he saw this coming and planned for it in some manner of speaking. It just doesn't seem like Sanderson to leave a chapter this impactful with so much discussion about sleight of hand and magic tricks and looking into things to find the truth, that it would be as plain as how it comes across literally. Maybe we'll get something in between where they both played each other to some degree, some wins, some losses. And look, we've seen Hoid further down in the Cosmere timeline in other series, and he doesn't seem to have been completely memory wiped and lost everything. So I think he's gotten away with it to some degree. To what degree exactly, I still haven't figured out, even almost 2 years, well, coming up to 2 years of that book coming out. I'm still completely unsure, and that's why the Stormlight Archive is just such a great series to read. It leads to so much discussion and lead you, doing something like this, collaborating with other booktubers and still talking about it to this day. Cheers for having me on cam. It's been an absolute honor being invited to your channel, and I hope you guys enjoyed my answers to these Stormlight Archive questions.
I'll be honest, I still have a lot of unanswered questions. I'm still very confused about where book 5 in this series will go, but thanks to Lost in Discovery, I have a lot more answers than I did before. Make sure you subscribe to him if you haven't already. He's fantastic. I make videos all the time on fantasy books, so if that's your kind of thing, then I would love it if you stuck around. Thanks for watching, especially for watching through the whole video. You are my favorite. Make sure you let me know what you think in the comments, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Catcha.